Bears, blog, boys, you know it all, computer, analytic, geeky nerds. Michael Schneider, Tom Cavanaugh, the Bear, blog, boys, know-it-alls. Doing some podcast somewhere. Nobody wants to hear you. Geeks, you pencil-pushing, skinny jean wearing geeks, you.
Coming to you live from our mama's basement, this is the Bears Blog Boys podcast. I'm your co-host, Tom Cavanaugh, here with my good buddy and other co-host, Michael Snyder. Snyder, it's been a pretty uneventful news cycle since the last time we talked. I mean, the Bears added James Lynch. I don't know if that gets your juices flowing, but how have you been doing, buddy?
I've been all right, man. Like you said, pretty slow news week since the last pod. So that leaves us to talk about some draft things and at a very position of importance. I'm actually excited to dive into it, get your take, because it's a major need. But yeah, other than that, Tommy, I've been doing good.
We didn't talk about this last time, Senator. Before we get into the draft, there's just one signing I think we should have discussed a bit about, and that is the Bears signed Cam Lewis, who has been kind of like a veteran, like I guess utility backup special teamer for the Bills for a while. He's played basically everywhere since he's been with the Bills. So I don't know if that's who they're viewing as their starting safety right now, because they're not viewing him. They brought Elijah Hicks back as well. They brought Jack Sanborn back. There's just a couple moves we haven't discussed. But in terms of safety, I don't know if that's who they're viewing as their starting safety. He's played a lot of nickel or like dime linebacker. I know he can play some safety, but I don't know, Snyder. Is there anything that you found of significance with that signing, or do you think he's just purely depth?
Yeah, I like the signing, right? How many times, maybe the past 3-4 years, have I asked for a signing like that? We got it last year mid-season with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Just a guy that, has some nickel safety. You said this guy plays everywhere, but just having that versatility, I think that's like one of my most important things as far as like depth. I think every team should strive for that type of player as like your backup nickel and your safety three. Maybe there's like, packages where that guy is playing a lot of snaps, right? Or you can be a little bit creative with him, have Kyler a little bit inside, whatever it is, right? You have a little bit more flexibility when you add a guy with that versatility in the room. So I've been wanting that type of signing for a long time. Even going back to the draft, I think guys like Elijah Molden come up to name. Like just guys like that I've been pounding the table for the Bears to either sign a free agency or take like a round 3 to 4 flyer.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the kind of player he is. Everything you just outlined, like he can basically play everywhere. So over the course of his career, 454 snaps in the box, 371 snaps at free safety, and then 545 snaps in the slot. And then he's also played some corner too, 72 snaps at corner. So this is a guy that's done everything. He's going to be a special teamer for you. I think as your third safety, like you just outlined, Snyder, I think that you're here in really good shape. There's no doubt that the Bears need to address this position still, and we'll talk about the safeties in this draft. I don't really think there's a ton of guys left in free agency, so you're really hoping and praying on the draft to solve this position, and I don't love that per se, but the Bears have the draft capital to do that. That probably reflects what they think of the safety class, which is looking like a pretty good class all in all. But yeah, I mean, as a third safety, as a guy who you need to fill in multiple spots for you, I think this is what they wanted Nick McCloud to be, and he just wasn't that guy. So for all those reasons, I do like the signing too. If he is depth, if he's a starter, I definitely am not as fired up about the signing.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Depending where they go safety in the draft, they're going to take a swing, right? It could be as high as round 1. It could be as low as, round 3 to 5, somewhere in there. But someone is going to be added to the room. I've been asking for this ad for a long time. I remember pounding the table for like an Andrew Makuba or like a Xavier Watts or like a Kevin Winston, just to prepare for this scenario when we had like no safeties going into the offseason. I hope this can be the draft where I do get an early investment, whether that's round 1, you have 2 swings in round 2 or round 3. I think that's a good, probably my preference would be round 2 to round 3 in there, because that's typically where the value is. I have heard some buzz on some names in round 1. not opposed to it. I think it's still a very important position. And then if you could have a long term, just lock there with a round 1 pick, I am totally with that. But yeah, this is the draft. I think you need to finally do somewhat of a significant draft investment.
Yep, I agree with you there, and I think that I think what you just said about the safety position being like you can take it on day 2, you can take it on day 1. I think there's some names on day 1 to monitor as I'm just going through the class, but yeah, I think consensus wise, like it's viewed as a much better class than it was last year. So that's I think reflecting why the Bears feel kind of confident they could solve that position. And because if you think about it, they have 4 picks in the top 100. So I would assume one of those picks is going to be at this position. All right. Why don't we move over to what we're going to be discussing today? And that is the defensive end class. And I just want to, before we get into the actual players, I just want to kind of talk about, I think a lot has been brought to light about what Dennis Allen looks for at this position. And our guy Q at On Tap Sports, obviously, who we do a lot of work with, he did a great job outlining. He's gone through like the history of Dennis Allen's draft history as a defensive coordinator. I would say I think he did all the way back to Oakland, but I think since like New Orleans, I think is really the best time to look at what he has typically looked for, because Khalil Mack is in there if you extend his time to Oakland with the Raiders, and I just think that they drafted Khalil Mack because he was one of the best players. I don't think they were really like, going for a specific type. But if you just look, Snyder, like across his tenure as a defensive coordinator or the head coach in New Orleans to now, it is a very specific type. They are all tall, they are all big, and they all have long arms. And Q brought this up too, and I think it's something that has not been talked about. They are usually explosive. That is usually a pretty big deal. They're usually like among all of the athletic testing, they are typically on the more explosive side. And I think when you just look at what he wants from his defensive ends, schematically, what he asked them to do, they're playing usually tighter to the tackle, right? They're not in these wide splits that we see across the league for some other teams in attacking front styles. They're holding against the run. They're playing a gap and a half. They're doing more, I think, in the run game than other typical defenses. And then in terms of pass rushing, he wants guys who can rush with power. That's what he wants. He wants guys who can rush speed to power. And obviously, I think the other stuff about pass rushing, winning high side, winning around a tackle on their outside shoulder is important. But I think like the primary meat and potatoes, what do you want from this position? I think it's everything I just laid out. That's the type he wants.
Tom, I'm not going to go too off the rails, rant about this, but let me ask you, when you look at league wide, right? How many guys are even like that in the NFL though, right? Like, I just feel like you want, again, and I get it, right? I get the guys by stature, but who is like doing that, right? Where you're getting the pass rush production and you're getting the run defense production with a guy of that stature. And then when you look into the draft, where my mind goes to is like the Shamar Turners of the world, the guys that, okay, combine, hey, he has some explosiveness. He has the height, he has the size, he has the length. Okay, let's take a high swing on this guy and hope we can teach him to play football, because most of those guys that are everything that you described and are actually that of like a polished football player coming out, those are always pretty much top 5, top 10 picks, right? If there even is that kind of guy. So I understand having a type, but again, even our boy Q, right in the comments, Max Crosby, Myles Garrett, and I don't know if he said Aiden O'Connell. I don't know if that was a mistake, but not too many guys like that, right? When I think of a guy like that, you're thinking, my mind goes to Myles Garrett, and there's not too much in between there.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why, unfortunately, Dennis Allen's had a lot of whiffs because I honestly, like Marcus Davenport was definitely a whiff for what they paid for him to be. Q just corrected and said Aiden Hudson. He was a whiff for what they paid for him to be. They paid 2 first rounds to get him, but I actually think like he was one of the better examples of like this is exactly what Dennis Allen wants. He was all speed to power all the time, and he could set a hard edge in the run game. Like that's basically the epitome of what he wants. He couldn't stay healthy, and so I think there was also just like clear limitations to his game. But so obviously the price they paid for him, but like that was one of the hits. If you just look at the history throughout his time in New Orleans, I'm thinking of guys like Peyton Turner, Isaiah Foskey, like guys who just flat out could not play in the league, like who just basically flamed out at this point. I don't even think Isaiah Foskey's on a team right now. And I think when you're so specific at going for that mold, it's going to be really, really hard to find impact players. I think Snyder, you can bring it close to home. He shot for that with Deo, and it has not looked good. And I think where he went wrong with Deo is just not very athletic. And but even if, like, you're totally right, there's only so many guys who are huge and can also win in multiple ways as a pass rusher to where like they're like the guys you can literally hang your hat with your defensive line on. I think it's a really hard mold to shoot for.
I think a good recent example, Tom, is, and I like how Q brought up Aiden Hutchinson is totally that guy. I think you looked at a guy like a Trayvon Walker, right? Where you had the length, the size, the explosiveness, but then he was in a rotation at Georgia, didn't have a lot of like the technical side of the position. And because of that, he was drafted number 1 overall. Is one of the biggest overthoughts, I think, in maybe draft history. Now, he is coming along, but it's like that mindset of like, oh, this guy is exactly what we want. He is our, your Cam Jordan type of, stature with even more athleticism. And you're like, whoa, this guy could really be something that not even like a Cam Jordan was, and it's just like, man, you're selling yourself on something that like can totally flop, right? Like you're ignoring the risk there. And that was a guy who was, check those boxes, number 1 overall pick, and it still wasn't worth it. Right now, Bears are picking at 25, so it's like what you're trying to put in your system and the guy you're trying to find. Again, it is very, very, very hard to. And it's very hard to just teach those guys how to play football coming out.
I think it's important to look at this position for what it is. And when you look at the guys who are really good in the league, they are undoubtedly athletic. They're usually the best athletes. There's no doubt about that. I am not disputing you need to be athletic for this position because it's, I think, a proven fact that if you're not athletic, you're usually not good at this position. That's just the way it is. It's like almost like a disqualifying kind of part of the evaluation, or that's why, Snyder, that's why we talk about the combine so much, me and you. And like, when we look at some guys we had high hopes for, a guy that comes to mind, Darius Robinson, who has really not done much in Arizona, where he just totally bombed. And it's like, there's so much evidence that says this guy's not going to be a high level player for you, and that scared us when we're talking about if the Bears could potentially draft him. I think in also the same vein that does not get discussed enough is your production in college. That is almost as important, if not more important, that if you don't hit certain thresholds throughout your college career, especially early in your college career, like we see it all the time, especially nowadays, and we'll talk about a guy too, where they're breaking out late and that doesn't really hold as much weight as if they are breaking out when they're supposed to. But if you don't break out at all and get to a certain threshold, it's really, really challenging to expect that player to rise above the level they showed in college in the NFL. Because while we think that the coaching's better in the NFL and there's more time to develop and you're asked to do more pro style things, at the same time, you're going up against the best offensive linemen and schemers in the world, right? Like literally across the world. So it's only going to get more challenging for you. So while the draft is a very optimistic time to think about these players and what their long-term outlooks are going to be, we just always have to remember that more times than not, the guys who never show it in college never show it in the league. Most of the time. I wouldn't say there's obviously specific cases. Danielle Hunter is the case that everyone wants to point to guys who were not productive in college, who ended up being productive in the NFL as pass rushers specifically. It doesn't mean they won't be useful players in some rotation, in some form, but I'm talking specifically pass rushing. If guys were not productive on a snap per snap basis, if they weren't one of the most productive players at their position when it comes to rushing the passer, I think it's a very bad gamble to expect them to get better in the league.
And you know what? I feel like maybe years prior, like a lot years prior, Danielle Hunter was a 3rd round pick, right? Those were back in the day, that's where those guys were drafted, right?
Yep.
Late round 2, 3, round 4. And if you took, late round 2, round 3, round 4 picks on those type of guys, I'm all for that, right?
Yes.
And you can maybe draft, develop, hope he comes to it. Nowadays, these guys are being drafted like early round 1. You see Ryan Poles take the same guy in round 2, basically 3 swings with, if you include Zach Pickens, because the draft was short of pick that year. But same thing with Shamar Turner, Gervon Dexter. It's been like kind of like the same process with some of those guys. But again, back when Danielle Hunter was drafted, that was the norm for those guys to kind of get there. Coming out, you had to be a lot more polished. And I think you're selling yourself on the traits, the length, maybe where they played football at, but then ignoring like, hey, this guy was in a rotation. You really see that a little bit more prevalent now. And, you got to have buyers beware. There's just so much data like you have right here. It's pointing to is like, hey, man, this ain't the right process.
Yeah, it's definitely really important. I think it's something that we should not underlook, and that's one of the nice things about today's day, Snyder. We have so much information to learn from, and what is great about this position, I think it's one of the most, I wouldn't say solved, because even the guys that are productive, even the guys who are athletic, like Latu, I think is a good example, where he has not been the player I think people have expected him to be. He was one of the most productive players in college we've ever seen. And I still don't think he's lived up to that. There's no guarantees that guys are going to hit. But I think at this position, the guys who aren't going to hit. I think that's we've laid that out pretty well. Or we have actually at least a better idea. There's always there's always outliers that, defy the data sometimes. But that's what's nice about this position. And there's a player we're going to talk about specifically who's getting a lot of hype right now, who has the same exact profile that we fall for every single year, that the draft community, the NFL community falls for every single year. We will talk about him, but I will stop sharing my screen and I will just share my screen about players' athletic profiles as we go through this list. Sandra, I was thinking we were going to start bottom to top with the guys that I've watched. And to be frank, I have not watched the top guys, and I've also cut this list a little bit short. I'll tell you the guys I have not watched. So I'll share the consensus board right now, and I will.
And Tom, before you pull up the consensus board, I got to ask you, when it comes to this draft class, right? You look at the consensus board. You're not going to get David Bailey. You're not going to get Ruben Bain, right? They're not going to fall to pick 25. But when you look at guys and the consensus board, beyond that, from like the 18 range to like the low 60 range, you have about 10 guys, right? And you could look at that and be like, wait a minute, this edge group is kind of deep. There are a lot of guys on the consensus, but I think, is that more of like a positional importance and then maybe the lack of talent everywhere else? What would be your kind of like way of kind of interpreting that when you see that?
I think it is a pretty deep group. I think the tiers that consensus board are pretty accurate on what you're looking for, right? To some extent, right? I think it is a deep group, and it's probably one of the better position groups in this class. But I think you also have to be realistic that, like, past the guys, I would say in the top 20, I think there is a pretty significant drop off to where you're probably not getting like every down impact starters. They're probably just really good at one thing. You know what I mean? Or they're, in some cases, or they're just totally like upside swings, which we talk about all the time. They're not actually upside swings. They're usually pretty bad gambles if you're expecting a guy to like totally outdo what they've already done. We'll talk about a player specifically who I think that really applies to, even though I do like aspects of his game. But Snyder, while we're on the topic of the consensus board, I have not watched the top. I've watched a little bit of Ruben Bain and I've watched a little bit of David Bailey. Ruben Bain's interesting because the league or some people, I guess, like some of the reporters saying he could fall because he has really short arms. And while, arm length is important for Dennis Allen, I wonder if he was slipping to like 10, could this be a guy you feel like you should trade up for because he is that damn good of a pass rusher? I mean, from the games I've watched, because I watched Messidor and just kind of caught Ruben Bain here and there, not here and there. I mean, he's always impacting the play. He's awesome. So I really want to watch him just in case a situation like that were to happen. If he did fall, I don't think he's going to fall. I still think he's going to be like a top 7 pick. So I don't think he'll be really realistic, but he's really good. I really like him. I have not watched Cassius Howell because he is like 30-inch arms and he's below 250. Same with R. Mason Thomas, both really small guys. I would be shocked if either one of those guys get drafted by the Bears. We just laid you out the stats of the mold that Dennis Allen looked for. Those are well below his thresholds. Same with a guy like Romello Height. Same with a guy like Joshua Josephs. I have not watched any of those guys. I watched a little bit of Denai Dennis Sutton. We can talk about him a bit. But mainly the list that I am working from is Gabe Jacas from Illinois, TJ Parker from Clemson, Derek Moore from Michigan, Keldrick Falk from Auburn, Malachi Lawrence from UCF, Zion Young from Mizzou, and Akeem Messidor from Miami. And I have watched a bit of Denai Dennis Sutton. So, Steiner, is that a good list to work from? Because I feel like it's just easy to kind of eliminate some guys.
Yeah, no, I like what you did there. And here, the value lines up, right, where the Bears are picking, right? They didn't sign any free agent edges that you feel good about throwing into a starting lineup, or it didn't solve the issue at all. But the Bears have picked 25, 2-round 2 picks. They're going to be able to take some swings here. Maybe they take 2, whatever they do, right? You can confidently say, or at least you hope, one of these guys, the Bears are going to take a swing on, to add to that room. There's a very real possibility, probably more likely than not, that one of these guys the Bears are going to be taken here.
Yeah, I think honestly, Snyder, while we don't love usually taking edges on day 2, I think that's typically, depending on what you're looking for. If you're looking for rotation depth, then I think it's an okay thing. I think there are like bits and pieces of people's games you might need where their strengths kind of align with some backup rotational help. But if you're looking for starters, it's usually not a great gamble either, because again, this position is, I hate saying solved, but it's, I think, easy to attack the guys that are worth attacking in round 1, and then it kind of just leaves everything else behind. But there are, I think, like sub rushers for what Dennis Allen wants in terms of power rushers around that late round 2 range of the draft, at least on the consensus board right now. And we can start out talking with the first guy. That's Gabe Jacas from Illinois. So I'm pulling up his mock draftable spiderweb right now, but he's a big boy. At least he definitely fits what Dennis Allen has typically looked for at this position. I got his mock draftable up right now, and he did not test yet. And I don't know when their pro day is. And that will be important because I think he's athletic, but I would like to see it kind of come to life with the athletic testing. So at the combine, he was listed at 6'4", 260, 33-inch arms, 10-inch hands. See 30 reps on the bench, Snyder. And I think when you watch his game, that really shows up. He's really, really strong in the run game. He's got issues in the run game, and we'll talk about him. I think Q tweeted out like the Ohio State game was one of the most frustrating games of any prospects he's ever watched. And I totally agree with him. There's a lot of frustrating elements of his game, but if you're just looking at pure physical profile, what this guy provides, I think he's pretty much in the image of what Dennis Allen wants. He's a stack and shed guy in the run game. He plays low. He sets a hard edge. He invites the physicality. You love like kind of the mentality he plays with. When he's the unblocked guy in the line of scrimmage and they're sending pullers his way, he's throwing his body right into the pullers to kind of muck things up in the run game. He plays the right way. And then as a pass rusher, I think you see some of those same things. He's got some issues technically. There's not a lot of pass rush moves in terms of like clearing hands, deconstructing blocks. But if you're just talking about pure speed to power, his best reps look pretty good. And among all of these guys, I think he has the most potential to like that being like a devastating part of his game. He kind of drives me crazy though, because he is so amped up and juiced up before the snap. He cannot settle his feet. So he's laid off the ball all the time because he's just moving his feet all the time because he's like, he just wants to be like so like Energizer Bunny charged up, and it just doesn't go anywhere. He kind of like stalls out. So that will need to be fixed in order for him to be maximized as a pass rusher. But in terms of what you're actually expecting for him to be, like his ceiling, I like that's like really like the only way he tries to win. And I don't really see like a high level edge bender. Like I just don't think that's a part of his game. He's like too big, too stiff. I don't really see that. So, but in terms of what Dennis Allen wants for a guy you could probably get on day two, I think he makes a lot of sense. I don't know how much impact he's going to have year one because, like I just said, 4 years at University of Illinois, and there's still like a lot I think he needs to work on. But if you're talking about taking a guy like Keldrick Falk in round one versus a Gabe Jacas in round two, I think Jacas sounds a lot more appealing to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy I was looking at his profile. It looks like he's grown in every season. At 12 sacks last year. Did check out in the advanced metrics as far as solid pass rush rate. Probably a little bit more to desired in the run defense. But when you look at his profile, and then his strength and everything, it looks like he has an ability to be a pretty well-rounded guy. You're just having to tap into that, and yeah, I wouldn't be upset at all taking a swing like this guy maybe late in round two.
Yeah, I think he's a guy you probably like as a sub rusher if you can really fix that get off. And I think what hurt him is like a guy like him should not be playing out of a 2-point stance, and they had him doing it all the time. Like you want this guy's hand in the dirt. And I think it would honestly help his bull rush too because he shoots a little high with the bull rush. I think he plays with great pad level in the run game. So I'm like, this guy can play lower. Like I know he can. I know he can shoot for offensive tackles' chest as a bull rusher lower, really get under them, really drive them back. But yeah, I think that would help him coming to Dennis Allen's system. He'll play with his hand in the dirt a lot more than he did at U of I. And hopefully that would help settle his feet. Like, just chill out, dude. You don't need to be moving around as much as you do pre-snap. And then, Center, you brought the run defense grade. That's probably like my most concerning thing with him because while physically, I don't think there's any limitations in the run game. He can stack and shed blocks. He can finish plays too. Like as a tackler, whenever he finds the ball, it's really good. He does not find the ball a lot. There are plays, the Ohio State game, where like he is so taken by a ball fake, like a play action fake or an option. He goes to the wrong guy. Like he is totally out of the play. And it happens all the time. It's actually insane, like how self-inflicted it is when he takes himself out of plays. You're like, dude, what are you doing? Like the play is past, it's been like 3 seconds and you're still going after the guy who doesn't have the ball. That will have to change because, again, I don't expect this guy to be like a high-profile pass rusher. So if you're going to be a guy that's going to be on the field every single down, and I'm going to live with you not being an amazing pass rusher, you can definitely be an asset there, but you're not going to be amazing. You better be the best run defender you could possibly be. And physically, I think there's no limitations. It's just really the mental side of it. Do you know what's going on? Do you know who has the ball? Can you find the ball? Those are big, big questions with him.
Yeah, I mean, here, like you said, at the NFL level, those mistakes, you're going to get put on your ass a lot quicker than you did. You can't just get away with your physical profile. Sometimes, like, you could get away with that in the college level. At the NFL, like, if your feet are crossed and dangled, you're going to get tossed on your ass so quickly. So he's going to have to figure that out.
100%. He's definitely going to have to figure that out. And I don't want to prolong on him because I know there's a couple other guys we have to talk about. We'll talk about Austin Booker at the end. I'll talk about Austin Booker because I think, fans are like kind of saying like, why isn't he viewed as a starter? And I like to talk about him. We can talk about him at the end. Let's keep moving through this list. So the next guy I had on the list was TJ Parker from Clemson. And Snyder, this was a guy who was like a top 5 player heading into this draft season. He was a highly recruited guy. I think he was a 5-star recruit, and he had a good season last year from a production standpoint. Took a step back like most people at Clemson did. At the combine, he comes in at 6'3", 263 with a wingspan of 79 inches, arm length of 33 1/8, 10-yard split of 1.61. It's a really good time. A 40-yard dash of 4.68, a vertical jump of 34 inches, a broad jump of 120 inches. I think he checks a lot of boxes physically, which surprised me because I didn't know just like how good of an athlete he was. And when you watch the tape, I just think that he does a lot of things. He checks a lot of the boxes. Like he just does a lot of things solid. He sets the edge. He's hard to kind of option off. I think like he's not. If you leave him unblocked, like he can be an asset in blowing up plays. He can rush speed to power, like you see it every now and then, where he'll have really, really good reps. And then when he's able to land a move at the top of his rush, he can corner really well. The thing with him is I just think he's really stiff. I don't think he drops his pads very well. Even as a bull rusher, like he just struggles to get low. And then when he tries the corner, like he doesn't drop his pads at all. It is like all tilt. He leaves his chest really, really exposed. And that just kind of I think just overall, I don't see like anything special about his game. Like if the Bears, he's a popular mock draft pick for them in 25. I just don't know what he solves for you. I think he's very much what the Bears already have. He's just very solid across the board. Nothing really like stands out in terms of a trump card with his skill set, which is what I think the Bears need. I would rather go after one of these pass rush specialists than just to go after a guy who's kind of just solid at everything and doesn't really take you over the top anywhere.
Yeah, it's almost an argument that, not to get too off the rails, Tom, it's like you would almost rather have a guy that doesn't fit your system, right, as far as like length and stature. But hey, maybe this guy is an athletic freak. He actually has a plan, just a speed rusher dude that you could put on a 3rd and long. Like I think that's just conversation that you need to have. Everything you mentioned about a TJ Parker, I don't want a solid across the board, maybe, clog the lane a little bit, and I think a lot of these like 4-3 guys kind of sell themselves like, hey, the Dios of the world, what they do is not going to really show up on the stat sheet, but they keep the engine in the back 7 running like we're doing. And I don't like that logic because, when you're talking about a playoff team, when you're talking about, on these 2nd and longs, 3rd and longs, getting these guys in these just impossible 3rd downs or whatever it is, you need the pass rush juice, right? The things that you highlight with some of these guys who, again, are just solid across the board, fit your scheme by stature. They're not impacting the game in those crucial moments. So, when you mentioned at TJ Parker and you mentioned where he's at in the consensus, you're talking about pick 25, that's an easy pass for me.
Yeah, it's an easy pass for me too. And I tweeted out like he doesn't do anything for me. And I think if you needed like floor in the 2nd round, like let's say you are the Miami Dolphins and you need kind of like a tone setter, like someone can start for you and just like not be horrible, then that's your guy. Like I don't have any problem with taking a TJ Parker there, but specifically for what the Bears need, what does he do differently than Montez Sweat? Then Deo, he's probably a better pass rusher than, but like you need better than Deo, right? You need better than Montez Sweat. He's very similar to Montez Sweat, where I think he can like beat up on bad tackles, but it's like, no, you need an ace, right? Like you need someone who can really carry this thing. And to me, that's not him. He's more of a complimentary guy. So he does not excite me for those reasons, even though he is a solid player, no doubt about it. I think he's more of a day 2 player though. I probably wouldn't take him in round 1 in most classes. And I wouldn't take him in round 1 in most classes, Snyder, because the next guy, well, Gabe Jacas too. Like, I don't understand why there's that big of a gap between the two. I think they're like quasi similar players, even though, TJ Parker's definitely better. But I think they're pretty similar. The next guy, I think he's really similar. Derek Moore from Michigan. So I will look up he also did not test, but he came in at 6'4", 250 pounds. I think he's got pretty long arms too. Which is a plus, obviously, for Dennis Allen. So, yeah, 6'4", 255 pounds. And I think he played bigger. I think he just cut down to test. I think their pro days today. 33 3/8 inch arms. Snyder, he is like, if you could build a Dennis Allen sub rusher, when I say sub rusher, those are the obvious pass rushing down guys. Derek Moore is your guy. He is all speed to power all the time. He literally does not try anything else. And I think of the guys we've talked about the most, these past 3, he's got the most juice. Do I think his speed to power rush is good all the time? No. Like I think the best tackles will be able to take it away. But against some of the weaker tackles that Michigan faced this year, he's just taking it to guys. And his production shows it. Like, he's got really good production across 3 seasons now, I think. And it's kind of hard to weigh out because he was in such a heavy rotation at Michigan. But like when you just look at his best reps, that's exactly what Dennis Allen wants. Speed to power, crush the pocket. This is what this guy does. I think kind of like Jackus, I don't think there's any physical limitations in the run game. He can set an edge. He plays physical. He plays the right way. Some of the instincts I think are hit or miss. I think he has some of the same issues with terms of finding the ball and just kind of getting caught up in his one-on-one fight too much and not like remembering what the point of run defense is. And that's finding the ball carrier and tackling them for a loss. But I think there's potential in the run game. And I think for the Bears specifically, if you want to take him as your like sub rush juice on day 2, I would understand it. There's definitely issues like the fact that he literally doesn't try to use his hands to like keep himself clean at all is a problem. I think it slows him down. And then he doesn't try to corner at all. There's no outside speed rush whatsoever. He is pretty intriguing, mugged up in the A gap when they're able to allow him to rush inside. I think that's when you do see some hand usage. I think if he's able to go after centers, like probably like the smallest offensive lineman on the field, he'll drive him right back into the quarterback. So there's some intriguing elements I think that could be tapped into. And I think what he'll be really useful for a team is the stunt game because he can occupy multiple blockers as a pick guy. And then he has the speed and the juice to really loop around when they're able to stunt him up with a unblocked to finish plays. So he's like kind of more of like a glue guy to me. I don't know if I don't see like high level pass rush potential as a one-on-one guy. But in terms of the team construct, like in a pressure package, I think he'd be a pretty valuable piece to that, especially where you draft him, which is probably closer to like that that round 2, round 3 fringe.
Yeah, that's right. You're talking about, what you got in return from the Bills pick, right? Pick 60. Maybe he'd fall to round 3 there, whatever it is. Again, no issue taking on a swing on that at this position group. In that range at all. What you said about the TJ Parker, I'd rather take the Moore and the Jackus in that range over there. So yeah, I mean, no issues with that.
Yeah, I kind of see it the same way because I just don't really see that different of players, especially what you're aiming for, which I think is some pass rush juice. Like that's what's going to be the theme of the season. I just don't see you taking an early down player very high in this draft. And I think Derek Moore has potential as an early down player. I think he just needs to do a better job of getting off blocks. I think he stacks up blocks really well. It's just kind of the finishing aspects of the position that he does not do as well. But I like Derek Moore for what he is. I like if you can get him where he's listed on the consensus board right now, which I think is like in the 50s or 60s. I think that's a perfect price for him. And I'm definitely, he's 59th on the consensus board. That's exactly probably where I'll have him on my board. So I like him for what he is. The next guy, I don't think is that polarizing because I think a lot of people see him this way, but some people see him on the total end of the other end of the spectrum. And that's Keldrick Falk from Auburn. So center, his spider graph is pretty insane here. I'm trying to look him up right now. He was listed at the combine 6'5" and 7/8, 276 pounds. So yeah, he's listed as a DT right now, and we'll talk about that. But as an edge, athlete edge. So yeah, as an edge, he is like for size in like the top percentiles in most things, in height, in weight, 6'5" and 7/8, 276 pounds, a wingspan of 82 1/4 inch. And then his arm length is 34 3/8. I mean, these are all in the 80th percentile or higher. And then his jumps were pretty okay for an edge rusher, but when you kind of size adjust that, knowing how big he is, it's really impressive actually what he was able to jump. So this is a guy who's 20 years old, who plays at Auburn. He's really young. I think he'll be 21 as a rookie. But Snyder, this is what we just talked about. He's the guy that people think has this like untapped, limitless potential and just like has not put it together at the college level as a pass rusher. The production is really underwhelming. The film, I was more intrigued than I thought I would be because I think there's some like know-how with what he's doing as a pass rusher, more so than I thought. I thought he was just going to be one of these guys that just like tries to run through your chest and it doesn't go anywhere, when that's really not how he plays at all, especially at least on the edge. They move him inside quite a bit, and he does play like that. I don't think he has like kind of the awareness, or I guess the pass rush development to use any moves on the inside because it's a much more linear path. But when he's out in space as an edge rusher, he tries to win in finesse ways. Like he's chopping down the hands, he's trying to corner, he's trying to get around you. And I just think that there's some limitations with those ways he tries to win because he can't really slow down to redirect, flip his hips to the quarterback, get around you, and like really turn to get to the ball carrier, get to the quarterback. And then I just think he's kind of stiff. Like his ankles are just not very flexible to where he can plant his ankles in the ground, turn around you, stay on his path. He gets pushed around the pocket too often. And what is so frustrating about him is, dude, you're 6'6". He was listed at 285 at Auburn with almost 35-inch arms. Why do you not try to rush with power ever? Like you never tried to rush with power ever. It is insane. He's a really good run defender. He stacks guys up really well. He sets a hard edge. He can get off blocks in the run game. It's impressive what he's able to do there. So I'm like, and you see maybe once a game, he's trying to rush speed to power. It's a bull rush. It's a long arm. And it's like, okay, I'm intrigued here. I'm excited with what, but then throughout the rest of the game, he just doesn't do it. There's like one clip I saw and I posted it. I was like, why don't we get this more? Like, is someone telling you not to rush with speed to power? Because you're the biggest guy on the field right now. You're the biggest size, weight, speed athlete on the field, yet you do not play up to that athleticism. You don't even try to play it to that athleticism or like that style of play. So just a really frustrating evaluation. And I don't know like what the disconnect is. And I don't know if you can teach that in the league. Again, we talk about it all the time. Guys who haven't done it in college, why can't you do it in the league? Or you're probably not going to be able to do it in the league.
Yeah. Tom, this is one you gotta play close attention to as a Bears fan because they're gonna love this guy, right? We both know it. They are gonna like this guy a lot. It's kind of scary, but man, you gotta expect it almost, right? If he's there, that it's probably likely the Bears would take a swing on this type of player.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Snyder. When they listed his measurements out, I posted the Ryan Poles laser eye meme. I'm like, this is like how you build them, right? In their image. But the question people have with him is he even that athletic? And the fact that he did not run the 40-yard dash, I think, is a little alarming. And the jumps were not amazing. They weren't anything crazy. This is not like Shamar Stewart level athlete. I don't think we're getting that. Like I think honestly his tape was better than Shamar Stewart's as a pass rusher, but this is not that style level of athlete. Shamar Stewart was running like in the 4.4s or wherever he ran at that size. I don't think he's that level of explosive. I think he's an above average athlete for his size, which is something you definitely have to weigh out. So let's say he goes to I think if he's running a bad time, he's just not going to run in the cycle in the pre-draft process. But if he goes to the combine and has a bad time, I think he'll slip further than people think, because the 10-yard split is really, really important for this position. And then the change of direction, I think, is maybe the most important thing for this position. And if he doesn't do those, I think you kind of have your answer. But I don't think the change of direction is as important for what Dennis Allen has looked for in the past.
Yeah, this will be an interesting one, Tom. This one that definitely fits our fears.
Snyder, if you're seeing the list right now, look who I'm look who I'm highlighting over. It's your boy.
Yeah.
It's your boy. That's who he athletically compares to right now. So yeah, it is a scary proposition. To me, I would not take him in the first round. The production is too scary. I wish I had my model up here, or it's not my model. It's Q's model who actually made for us, but he's among the lowest in that group in terms of pure production, snap per snap production. And again, I just think that's a bad gamble to take in round one, but he's definitely someone Bears fans should know. Maybe he'll go higher than that. You know, he was again, one of these guys that was like in the top 10. And I think he's slipping a bit as people get closer or watch more film of him. I think he's like Nate Tice is like a number one, or like he's like a top 5 player for Nate Tice. I don't see that at all. He's like a day 2 player for me all day long. And yeah, someone I'm not really interested in adding in round one. The next guy, Snyder, I struggle with in terms of Bears lenses. That is Malachi Lawrence, the edge from UCF. He's been a riser since the combine and the Shrine Bowl. So this is a dude with some juice, as you can see here. So he comes at the combine 6'4", 253 pounds. Arm length 33 and 5/8 inches, a 10-yard split of 1.59, just an outrageous number at that size, a 40-yard dash of 4.52, the 95th percentile, a vertical jump of 40 inches, 96th percentile, a broad jump of 130 inches as the 97th percentile for edge rushers. I think the testing tells a lot of the story, Snyder. He is explosive, and he's really good at maximizing his explosiveness. I think the get off is really technical. He doesn't waste a whole lot of steps. He's coming forward. And what's nice about him is like the second and third steps look even faster than the first one. He can really build up some speed to get around the arc, where he doesn't even really have to be that bendy. He's just so damn explosive that he can really corner at a high level. What I like about him, what is such a hard part of his evaluation to me is what he offers you as a pass rusher is like probably like the most valuable thing an edge rusher can offer. He corners really well. He works moves at the top of the arc really well. He's very good at like the high side speed rushing. That's what he does, and he's really good at it. The rest of his game, not so sure if he's good at it. I think in the run game, he looks really lost a lot of the time. He takes terrible angles in terms of like keeping his leverage against pulling blockers. I think he just looks kind of lost a lot of the time. I don't know how strong he is to like consistently hold up, set an edge. I don't know what you're really getting with him on early downs. I think there's potential there with his frame. I think he can get bigger, and he's so athletic that even if he did get a little bigger, I don't think it's going to take a lot away from that. And then I think he just needs to get like smart, not smarter, but I think recognize things quickly. But if he was available in round 2, which it sounds like he might go in the first round now, like his reputation is really building itself up. Would Dennis Allen take a guy like this? Like, would he has somewhat of the size profile. He offers a little bit of a different skill set, but it's a skill set the Bears need, right? So in round 2, let's say the Bears traded down from 25 back into round 2 and Malachi Lawrence was there. Would he take a guy? The Bears definitely need a guy like this, but isn't typically from a skill set perspective has fit the Bears in the past or fit Dennis Allen in the past.
From my indication, I would say no. I just feel like they have their type. I feel like the GM is very married to Dennis Allen and his type. It may not pick, the better player or the better long-term or the guy that, hey, he's going to be more valuable on these, second and longs, third and longs, late in a game. So, I mean, would I be all for something like that and adding something different to this defensive line as a rotational piece in those situations? Oh, God, I'm all for it, right? Do I expect the Bears to do that? I really don't. I feel like they kind of, I don't want to say have that in Austin Booker, but it feels like as far as like adapting to a guy who doesn't really fit their scheme like by size, I feel like that's like the exception that they made. I don't know if they're gonna make any more into that room.
I definitely don't think it's going to happen in round 1, which is where people think he's going to go, like in the back end of round 1. I just don't think they're going to make that consideration. In round 2, maybe, right? Like maybe they're just realizing maybe Ryan Poles, hopefully Ryan Poles is like, hey, we love the big guys, Dennis, but like we need some juice, right? This guy's got the juice. He's definitely got the juice. I think I do have like, I wouldn't say this guy's like a surefire hit. His production profile is a little concerning. He broke out as a senior, which is never great. You want to see guys break out earlier, especially he played at UCF. So it's not like he's going up against the best talent in the world. I don't think he's that like quote unquote bendy. He's a tilter, right? Where he's not really dropping his pads. He's not ducking under tackles. He kind of tilts around the edge because he's so fast. And I think that presents its issues. Like he'll get pushed around the pocket quite a bit. I think just finishing overall is something you'd want to see more from him. He misses tackles and doesn't finish as many plays as maybe you'd want to. The thing that is uncanny with him is the explosiveness and then his ability to work moves at the top of the arc. And when I say the top of the arc, just think about when an edge rusher is at his fastest point, where he's further into the pocket and he's turning the corner to get to the quarterback. His ability to clear hands or get a blocker out of the way. He has a long arm move where he can literally stay balanced while holding himself with one arm. He's holding the offensive tackle, just throws the tackle out of the way. It's insanely impressive. All of that, those skills he's able to work. I think this dude provides somewhat of a floor as a pass rusher. Is he going to be elite? That's the question you're going to have to ask yourself, because I think he's pretty one-dimensional. Like, he doesn't rush speed to power really well, but his counter moves, his pass rush plan, and then the burst and somewhat of the bend or his ability to turn a corner, I think there's some type of floor there that I'm really intrigued with, that I would take in the back end of round 1 in this class. And I would definitely like think about for the Bears, like, this is exactly the kind of player you need.
Yeah, no, I'm game with that, Tom. I mean, I don't know if the Bears do that in round 1. But I'm game, right? Just because I know that we definitely need that juice, man.
Yeah, they definitely, that 100%. And he's one of the guys that has it. The next guy, total opposite, Zion Young from my alma mater, Mizzou, senior, 6'6", 262 pounds. Center. He did not test as well. I'm pulling up his spider chart. Sorry, I don't think I'm on this tab anymore. I will pull his spider chart up. But when you talk about Zion Young, I think I mentioned it. If my head is telling me this is the type of player the Bears would draft in round 1, I think testing will be really important for him. I don't know if he's going to test. He has not yet to test yet. My biggest concern with him is, what kind of athlete are you? Because I don't see a very special athlete on tape. I think he's kind of slow off the ball. I don't think he's very fast up the arc. I don't think he can change direction very well, but he plays the right way. This is a dude who loves the trash talk, who loves, again, the physicality part of the game. Snyder, there was a game, it was against Auburn. It was in overtime. And he's literally talking trash, like, and the coin toss for the overtime period. He's literally talking trash, and it's getting picked up on the ref's mic, like, while that is going on. Like, he's that kind of guy to where you want to love him. And the way he plays, you want to love him. I think there is some pass rush potential with him. I like his knockback power in his hands. I think he's got really strong hands. The precision isn't always where you want it to be. He tries different moves. He tries to corner. It just doesn't really come off clean to where he can finish and make plays. But I think there's more potential there. And the production has been okay as a pass rusher. It's not been terrible. As a run defender, he's one of the best in the class. I think he's really smart. I think he understands what offenses are doing. He puts himself in the right position to make plays. He's physical. He loves kind of the dirty work of the position. So he's a player I wanted to love more. I just have a lot of athletic questions. Okay, what kind of athlete are you? And if he can answer those, I'd warm up to that idea of taking him somewhere with one of the Bears' first couple picks.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I'm looking at the production as far as the pass rush and the run defense. It's certainly there, right? It circles back to our conversation when we started out this pod, right? If you don't have the athleticism, and it gets a lot more physical in the NFL, and these guys are a lot more athletic, it's going to be hard to find a home, right? You could be a really good football. It almost reminds me of like an AJ Epineza, right? Guy, really good football player, right? In college. Did not meet that that athletic criteria, and he's just been a rotational, solid football player type of guy. And I think he was a round 2 pick, which is fine for that, right? But now you're talking about this in round 1 pick. Now again, like you said, if he does deliver on the athletic testing, then okay, now you're gonna have a real conversation there. Now you can kind of get behind it. I am looking at the production, and it's there, right? Size is there. We just got to see how he tests.
Yeah, and I think too, like, the questions I have is like, are you not explosive? Because I think sometimes he's just laid off the ball, and it's like that can be fixed. It's whether or not, like, do you have the actual get up to go up and get after it in a fast paced motion? Do you have the juice to do that? That's my big question with him. And I don't think he'll ever be a good edge bender, even though he tries it sometimes. And I think he's pesky. Like, I think he's hard to totally a race out of the play in those scenarios, especially when he can really build up some speed. But I just don't. Our guy Steve CFC was talking about, like, we don't ever see like a high level pass. He's more of like your Montez Sweat type, but I do like him for what he is. And again, I wouldn't necessarily love if they took him in round 1, especially if he doesn't test well. I would not like that at all. But for this type of mold of player that we've been talking about, right? These like solid edge players. He's definitely my favorite one because of all of them. I think he's the best run defender by far, which does matter, right? Like I don't want to poo-poo run defense. And I think I like his pass rush potential maybe, or I guess just the way he rushes the passer a bit more than the guys we've talked about.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Tom. I think there's one more guy, unless I'm missing something that you really got to talk about. It's probably going to be the most interesting conversation here.
Yeah, he's my far and away top guy of this group, and that's Akeem Mesidor. Very interesting story. Miami, he has not yet to test either, and that's I think is a big thing for him. I think the medicals just in general, like what teams saw at the combine. So if you just look at his frame, it's not very impressive. 6'3", 259 pounds. He's got short arms, even though his wingspan, his wingspan is also short. His hand size is decent, but not a very impressive frame. And when you just kind of look at his profile, what happened to him in college. So there's a lot of injuries, which is definitely something teams are going to have to monitor. But when you're in college football for 6 years, that's usually the story anyway. You probably are dealing with some injuries, but Senator, this is a guy who has started off his career as a defensive tackle, transfers to Miami after 2 years at West Virginia. I think he played a bit on the edge as like an oversized edge his first couple of years. And then they tried to move him to defensive tackle. And last year was like literally the first year they were like, hey, just drop a bunch of weight and play as a true edge defender. And he was awesome. A total ass kicker as a pass rusher in so many ways. I mean, when you just talk, he reminds me, my comp for him is Laiatu Latu. That's who he reminds me of, where the guy's feel for rushing the passer is just unmatched at the college level, which is pretty low-hanging fruit when you talk about he's been in college football for so long that he should have a good feel. But again, this was like really one of his only seasons he was able to play as a true edge rusher. And I think, learning from Jason Taylor really helped him. He talked about some of the different things he learned with Brett Coleman. And when you hear him kind of walk through his process, it totally matches the film. He has a step up of the offensive lineman he's going up against because he knows their splits. He knows how they set. He knows if they're lining up this way, I'm going to do this. I have the answers to the test because I know what to look for. And that's exactly how he wins. He's just a step ahead of everyone. He's got so many moves, so many different ways to win in the bag. He's so slippery. Like that's the best way I can describe it. He's just so hard to get hands on because his hands are always working and he's always moving his frame around to where it's hard for offensive linemen to just kind of stay in front of him, that he's just lightning quick in the ways that he wins. And I think he's honestly exactly what the Bears need. He doesn't win typically as your Dennis Allen edges. He doesn't win speed to power a whole lot, even though he can. But he's just so crafty with his hands, and you can play him anywhere. That's what's awesome. Like almost his best reps are when he's able to line up as a stand-up guy in the interior. He embarrasses guards, like guards that can't hang with him athletically, that can't really move that well. He's just totally smoking them off the snap, and he's going up right up the middle where quarterback's got nowhere to go, and he's causing hell. And what I like about him even more, Snyder, I know he's going to be 25 as a rookie, so we'll have that conversation. But in the biggest moments of that playoff run, when they needed a bucket, him and Ruben Bain were getting after it. In the most important moments, they played their best football. And we talked about this with not getting Trey Hendrickson. Who's the guy on the Bears team in a 2-minute drill where you cannot blitz and you're staying in hurry up, right? And you're staying in your base coverages and you're rushing with 4. Who's going to be the guy to close out that game? Akeem Mesidor was a guy who closes out those games for Miami. So again, it's hard to project because his profile is so interesting, right? Or I wouldn't even say interesting. It's extensive, right? But he, I think, has that skill set to where he could be one of those guys for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. I mean, where the Bears were at last year at a team, do you take a Mesidor? Probably not, right? Coming off a playoff win, right? Having this being such a group that needs a guy like Mesidor. How you feel that he can kind of just hit the ground running? I get it. He's 25. Man, you have to have a conversation of this level of a player late in round 1. You're projecting an instant impact. He does the things that, his production in college typically translates really well in the NFL just based off of data, right? If you are athletic, if you have the college production, typically you are going to hit the ground running, right? Um, I just think where the Bears are at as a team, it makes sense, man. Funny comment, sounds like the Velus Jones of DNs just because of the age. That's very hilarious. And I get it, right? The age, yes. But as far as the production, as far as the position of importance, as far as the Bears need, I mean, I think it checks all the boxes, right? You could live with it. If you get 5 years production out of him, that's a hit. That's a home run of a draft pick at 25. Maybe he doesn't get a second contract. Maybe he ages like fine wine. You don't know, right? If you get 4 or 5 years production out of this, where the Bears are at as a team, it's a home run pick. You forget about the age moving forward. If the Bears a couple of years ago told me they're going to draft, this type of player, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? What are you trying to accomplish, right? It's almost like the Montez Sweat trade, right? You traded a round 2 pick. It didn't really align to where the Bears are at, whatever. But now it does. Okay. So I am for that time. When you look at this production, you're gonna have to dive into a little bit of the background stuff. But again, if this guy loves football, if you're gonna get that production and you're all in on his character, take the swing, man. Ignore the age. Evaluate. You got to take in consideration where you're at as a team.
Yeah, he blew me away when listening to hearing him talk, because you just don't. And again, the age is such low hanging fruit, but you just don't. It kind of reminded me of Brian Burns at the time, because Brian Burns, I thought, had a similar approach. Listening to him talk about how he attacks offensive tackles, he was really thoughtful. And hearing Akeem Messidor talk about them, Snyder had to hop off. Has to go to work. But yeah, Hassan Reddick, I could see that a little bit. He doesn't play really powerful, which again, I don't know if that will be for Dennis Allen. He's not like an opposing run defender. He doesn't rush speed to power. Like, that's not really his game. He's all technical, like quick wins. I'm winning with hands. I'm clearing this block. I'm destructing the block. He can corner a bit. Again, I don't know how explosive he is, which I would really like to see him test. That's going to be really important for me, because I want some explosive numbers to kind of put on him. I think he can change directions really well, but if you're not explosive and you can't really put yourself in a position to change directions really well, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, there's a lot to go through with him. And look, I've heard from a source I really trust that he's been already crossed off of 2 teams' boards for medical reasons. And that just might be the case. Like, if he doesn't go where he's supposed to, we know why. Because he's had a lot of medical problems, and that's always risky. But again, this is not like a top 10 pick in the past with the Bears, right? Like last year when we were talking ourselves into drafting Shamar Stewart. How is it any less risky to take a guy who's never been productive as a pass rusher when we know it is very unlikely they're going to get better in that area of their game at the NFL level to a guy with Messidor's profile? Medicals aside, take medicals aside. How is it any less risky? And that's how I think you have to look at it. How is it any less risky to take Keldrick Falk at 25, who's never been productive, over Messidor? How is it any less risky? Because I think, again, you are selling yourself on a bad bet if you're expecting those guys to get exponentially better, which is what they would have to be in order to solve what the Bears are going for. It's like the same conversation you had on why you should sign a Trey Hendrickson. And that is, you're shooting for the top. There's obviously some risk involved, injuries, age, whatever the case may be. He's going to be expensive money-wise. You're shooting for a top outcome, which is what I think the Bears need on their defensive line to really get themselves over the hump. So yeah, if Messidor falls, yeah, for sure. But I'm with you. I get it. Like, I totally understand not wanting to take him in round 1. To be frank, I don't know if he'll go in round 1 because of some of the medical concerns that come around him. But you're not going to find guys who are better at rushing the passer than him in this class, in that range of the draft. Outside of the top guys, he's as good as it gets. And I think he solves a need for you. Again, I think you're making a lot of considerations for the Bears specifically. Is he the best athlete? Does he play the way that Dennis Allen wants to play? Those are really good questions. And I think those are going to be discussions that Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen and the rest of the staff are going to have. But I just think in a weird draft class where you really need to address the ceiling at this position because the other options are dried up. You're not going to get any of those top ceiling guys at this stage of the offseason. He's one I'm thinking real long and hard about because I do think he's that caliber of pass rusher. Like he just has so many moves, so many different ways to win. And he was getting NFL level coaching at Miami. You saw the leap that both not only him, Ruben Bain took as well because of what Jason Taylor was able to do with those guys. And I'm just going to bet on that with what the Bears need. You don't even need him to be an every down player. You have Dale and Austin Booker and other guys to eat up maybe some of the early down snaps, and he can literally just be a weapon for you. And I think that would be worth it because past pick 15, I think it's a pretty similar talent gap with a lot of these guys, more than we would like to believe from like pick 20 to pick 60. I think it's a pretty similar talent. And with him, he's exactly what you need. So that's my stance on Mesidor. I know he's not for everyone. I know there's risk involved, but man, I'm shooting for the top. That's what I want to do. Why don't we talk a bit about Austin Booker? Because we haven't talked about Austin Booker on this podcast really. And I think I'll go back to his college profile. I loved Austin Booker's tape. He was awesome. He was kind of reminded me of Mesidor, where he was just really skilled at beating blocks and having answers and like just playing way ahead of his time. He was like new to football, and he just had such a good feel for rushing the passer. My biggest concern with him were not even size. It was not even size related. I hate the fact that they've put a bunch of weight on him and made him less explosive, because my biggest concerns with him is he's not a good athlete. He's not a good athlete. This was when he was at 240 pounds. He had a 28th percentile 10-yard split, 50 percentile 40-yard dash, a 40 percentile vertical jump, and the broad jump was pretty good. You can weigh those numbers out however you want. I think you saw it in the college level. He does not win on a tackle's outside shoulder at all. It just doesn't come naturally to him. And I really think that comes back to he just not being a good athlete, which he finds other ways to win. He's super technical. He has really nice hand pop. You see the different reps. Sometimes he's able to just bull rush right over guys. But if you watch him throughout the entirety of a game, it's just not very exciting. I just think that he'll leave a lot to be desired from a snap per snap basis. As your edge 3, absolutely love guys like that. They have different ways to win. They provide somewhat of credible rotational depth. But as a guy you're expecting to be an every down starter, I just don't see it. And people are talking about his sack numbers. I really want us as a Bears fan community collective to realize sacks are very, very inconsistent. They are not really dependent on the edge rusher. There are a handful of sacks Myles Garrett gets every year, probably a lot of sacks Myles Garrett gets every year where they're because of him. But a lot of the times it's because quarterbacks holding onto the ball too long, or they're not at the right depth. Like you really have to look at the sacks to say, okay, did this guy earn this one? Pressures, pass rush win rate, pass rush grade, all those numbers very much more predictive and predict sacks better than sacks predict sacks. Vic Beasley is like the ultimate case study where he had 16.5 sacks his second season, literally was out the league in like 4 years because they're very volatile. And that's just the way it kind of works with edge rushers. It's the pressures, it's the win rate, it's all those stuff you need to look at. And Austin Booker, I think when you look at his numbers, that tells a more accurate story to me than the sacks he was able to accumulate in the second half of the season. So I like Austin Booker as your edge 3. I love him. He's probably one of the better rotational guys you can have. But if you're expecting him to be what the Bears need, which is an ace, I don't see it. I think he's closer to kind of more of a backup guy than an every down edge that I would trust. Any other things that I missed? We talked about Austin Booker. Dale was such a bad miss. It says 99 speaks. Totally agree. We talked about that. But before even he was signed, we were saying in that free agent class, Dennis Allen's going to love this guy, would not sign him. He's all like potential that has just not shown itself to be anything meaningful. Sorry, just going through the list, see if I missed anything here. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good time to end it. I need to watch more Dennis Sutton. I was a little intrigued with him. I thought he kind of knew what he was doing as a pass rusher. He's a really good athlete. I think the run defense was horrible for someone that big. He just got pushed around by like tight ends and stuff like that. So I remember watching him against or when I was watching Abdul Carter, and I was like, this guy's he was getting a lot of hype in the preseason leading into this year. And I was like, okay, yeah, it made sense why this guy stayed in college. I don't really see it with him. So I need to watch more of him. And then like LT Overton, I heard was a defensive tackle. I heard he wasn't even an edge rusher. So I haven't talked about him either. I don't know if there's any other guys you guys want us to watch or, give our opinion on, please reach out on Twitter at Tommy K NFL Draft or at Tommy K _NFL Draft. I hope this was a good primer for you guys. I think I'm going to end the stream here. So again, as always, appreciate y'all for watching. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube on Tap Sports. But until we meet again, y'all, keep it real. Bear down.